All right, everyone, it's time to talk about the looming US-China trade deal. This is a big victory for Trump because when he first set out a couple of years ago saying, well, China's screwing us on trade, they're tariffing things and we're not returning fire, so I'm going to fix this to make it more even-handed. The Democrats, remember, said it couldn't be done. Oh, there's not going to be a trade deal. He's out of his league. Haha, he's totally out of his depth. The first step of the trade deal, and this is just a preliminary first step, this takes pressure off the rest of the process and reduces a lot of the more onerous tariffs. Like China needs soybeans. The US needs to sell soybeans. Chinese tariffs on soybeans are being removed. Pork from the US. Certain goods from China to the US. This will smooth out the rest of the process and allow it to actually happen. What China was counting on was that Trump would be pressured internally within the US to stop the trade war, and that they wouldn't have to do anything. But instead, they realized that his breath is longer than theirs. He's not going to face enough pressure to actually stop. And here's the secret. They would not be worried about another year of tariffs. But they are worried about another 5 years of tariffs. They are expecting Trump to be reelected. They're looking at the political situation in the U.S. I can guarantee you the only reason they came to the table and agreed to this is because they looked at the impeachment sham, and they looked at the Dem field, and they looked at the dumb things the DNC was doing, and they looked at, most importantly, the British political system even prior to the actual election, and they see a grim outlook for the U.S. and the Western left. They're looking at the rise of populism in the West so that we can finally take back our Western economies and make them work for the average person, which they haven't in the wake of decades of neoliberalism and neoconservatism. The Pelosi's and Bushes have fucked us. The Mitt Romneys and all of these others, the Clintons, all of these people have basically turned the U.S. population, the Western world, into a bunch of vassals, oligarchy style. They're blaming it on my Nazis, my fascism, my far right, or what. That's not responsible. It's really the neolibs and neocons. They're the ones that have been in charge. They're the ones that have created the economy that we live under for 40 years. It's their fault. There's nobody else to blame. It's a bunch of people who wear monkey suits. Anyway, China didn't initially expect Trump to be reelected. They didn't take him seriously. I think genuinely they made the same mistake the Dems did. Didn't take him seriously. So then when he came in and started slapping tariffs on everything, even in the face of his own Republican Party, they were taken aback. They quickly reconnoitered and they realized, well, he's probably going to get reelected. Our economy can't weather 5 years more of this bullshit. So we're just going to give him a trade deal. We're gonna rescind some of the tariffs, give him what he wants, we'll deal with it, and then we'll deal with it later. They are not expecting the Democrats to prevail, because if the Dems prevailed the first day, the day one, like Biden says, well, day one, I'll sign the Paris Climate Accord. No, day one, you would go over and you would suck off Xi Jinping, you would bow before him, you would say, I'm so sorry that Donald Trump treated you so badly, and here I am to kiss your ring and tell you commies over here it's okay, it'll never happen again. Don't worry, we'll never let Orange Man Bad deal with the trade world again. That's what Joe Biden would do on day one. Warren would do the same. Bernie Sanders would go over there and start admiring the communist architecture. He'd be lost in his own thoughts. That's how these people operate. They're not America first. They're not even America last. They just don't even care about the United States. I genuinely believe that about more than half of the Dem field. And the ones that do are either non-viable or totally incoherent. I think Biden, to the extent that he cares, he's thinking of the U.S. under Jimmy Carter at this point because he doesn't even know what year it is. China on trade never had an advantage. I remember 2 years ago, like when I said, well, yeah, if there's a tariff war or something, the U.S. has the advantage and will win. A lot of people, even Trump fans, laughed. Several years before, I think it was 2014 or something, I had a video called China is a Paper Dragon, I think it was called, about how China's economic structure, this is half a decade ago I'm talking about this, their economic structure is so reliant upon exporting to their number one importer, which is the United States, that we fundamentally have them by the balls on a trade deal. It's just the way that it works. When a considerable double-digit proportion of your whole economy is directly just selling things to one other country, if that other country rocks the boat and takes that growth out from under you, here's the problem. The death spiral is if the U.S. tariffs their goods too much, Chinese growth slows down. Private U.S. investors, not public sector, not government, private investors who have a huge amount of money and a lot of assets in China get scared and leave. They take their money and their factories and their brands with them. This would cause a death spiral in China. Tens of millions of jobs would immediately be lost. Their unemployment would rise several points. China would be left with more debt, with less purchasing power, having to pump its economy even more with its own citizens' private investments, which is basically what it does. The Chinese stock market is different from in the US. In the US, a lot of stocks are held by the one percenters or by the upper middle class investing class with their few thousand or tens of thousands in assets. In China, a disproportionate proportion of their entire stock holdings is private citizens' pensions and things like that, and the government's been liquidating them to pump the economy full of growth. The government is literally stealing from its own people in order to provide the illusion that things are growing. That's why you have ghost cities and highways to nowhere and rail lines that nobody uses. Because central planning outpaced private growth. This is the law of centrality. This is the law of communism and totalitarianism of every stripe. Every centralized system will eventually build shit that nobody uses because some bureaucrat thought it was a good idea. It's automatically going to happen. Central planning has never worked and never will work on that grand basis. Government should provide a lattice work for private growth to exist on. Everything should be as privatized as possible outside of that, basically the skeleton crew lattice work of a basic rudimentary government and bureaucracy. It should be 99.9% privatized. Such a society not only can work, it is the law that it will work. It's what early United States used, and it was great. Why do you think that the Homestead Act was so fucking great? The government said, hey, here's all this land. Carve it up and give it away to people. Don't even fucking sell it half the time. Build your rail lines, connect the coasts, and then fill in everything in between. Let people privately do so. They'll build the roads. We don't have to build them. People build their own fucking roads. They'll build their own sidewalks. They'll build their own everything. They'll come in. Rich people will come in thinking that there's a business opportunity. They'll lay the bricks. They'll lay the rails. They'll put up the telegraph lines. And they did. And it worked. And we rapidly expanded and became an economic power. That's the tale of Western civilization. But China's already densely populated, has demographic problems, growth problems, everything else. China's already... If there were a concerted movement in the United States to condemn China for its human rights abuses and lack of basic concept of Western civics, then China's economy would go into a deep depression. It would hurt the U.S. economy a little bit, certainly, as U.S. businesses jostle to relocate to India and other countries. It would cause a death spiral in China. Trump knew this. These neoliberals tried to lie to the population and say, Orange Man too stupid to handle this. Orange Man doesn't even have to be a genius to handle such a situation. It's simple, lopsided economics. Their economy is make cheap shit, sell it to the United States. So if the United States ain't buying, they can get that cheap shit elsewhere. It's easy because it's made in other countries. There's no other major player in the world, though, that can absorb all of those goods from China. Their whole economy's been geared towards that one purpose. And towards spying on Western governments and businesses. Trump has won. Trump has won, and what they're expecting, the symbolism behind it is they expect him to be reelected, because they wouldn't be doing that just for another year of pain. If they only expected Trump to be able to be there for another year and then he's gone and the Democrats have won, they're not going to go ahead with a trade deal. The Democrat either will give up the idea entirely and say sorry, or at a bare minimum, what they would do is they would go and say, okay, well, Trump's position's not mine. Here, oh, wow, no wonder you're angry. Trump wanted this and that. We'll give it all up. They'd pull an Obama. They'd pull out, what's her name, Theresa May going to the EU for the first time and telling them they can basically bend her over and take whatever they want. They'd pull that scheme because they don't know anything about negotiation. They don't understand the idea of a big ask, or if they do, they don't want to make a big ask because their money's coming from China too. They're all controlled by commies. That's about all. Peace out.